Israeli occupation forces continue targeting residential areas across Gaza with 214 people killed in the last 24 hours. Palestinian health authorities registered over 10,500 kills since October 7th. In Japan, G7 foreign ministers met to address the ongoing Israeli war against Gaza, avoiding calling for a ceasefire and endorsing the Israeli onslaught. In Peru, a new political institutional crisis opens. The Constitutional Chamber ordered the suspension of the legislative process against the National Justice Board, while Congress announced that it will not recognize the decision. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On Wednesday, the Wafa agency reported a new bombing by Israeli forces in a refugee camp. The note points out that there are a large number of people under the rubble, so the number of dead in this new aggression is unknown. According to local media, the occupation forces targeted Nuseirat refugee camp in central Gaza Strip. And the report added that the attack targeted the residents of the Wafa family and also stressed that the dead and wounded have been transferred amid constant bombardment to the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital. Israel continues to target residential areas throughout Gaza with 214 dead in the last 24 hours. Authorities confirmed on Wednesday 10,569 Palestinians killed in Israeli attacks on Gaza since October 7th. On Wednesday, local media reported the Palestinian civilian population continues to walk towards the south, seeking to flee from the scarcity of food and water. The intensification of the bombings and the proximity of Israeli troops and tanks in the north. For this part, the Israeli army has called to evacuate areas of the north that will be the focus of intense fighting. However, attacks have been reported even in areas of the south that the Israeli occupation itself has declared safe. The local authorities emphasize that moving to the south does not guarantee security, but subjects one to the intolerable humiliation of forced displacement, in addition to the risk of death. On Tuesday, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, began a 5-day visit to the Middle East to address human rights violations amid the Israeli escalation in Gaza. Turk is in Egypt on Wednesday and will visit Rafah on the border with Gaza before heading to Jordan on Thursday. During his 5-day trip, he intends to discuss human rights issues with government officials, civil society actors, victims, and UN colleagues in the region. As the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights pointed out, it has been a full month of carnage, of unrelenting suffering, bloodshed, destruction, outrage, and despair.
One-month anniversary of this incredible escalation of violence that we have seen. I'm, of course, from a human rights perspective, extremely worried about the situation, about what is happening, and it is really important that a solution is found to end the violence and to get out of this horrible, horrible humanitarian and human rights situation for what's happening in Gaza.
G7 foreign ministers met in Japan to address the ongoing Israeli war against Gaza. The heads of diplomacy avoided calling for a ceasefire and endorsed the criminal operation against Gaza. The limited declaration signed by the European Union, Germany, Canada, the United States, France, Italy, Japan, and the United Kingdom merely calls for pauses and humanitarian corridors. They claim that in this way they facilitate urgent aid, while Israel continues to commit war crimes. On Wednesday, thousands of Palestinians in Gaza have gone a month without water and suffered 33 days of bombing. The United Nations reported that it lost 92 workers in Gaza. G7 diplomats also called for a two-state solution without condemning Prime Minister Netanyahu's promise of occupation. Israel continues to generate internal tensions with its main partners. On Tuesday, the U.S. Senate blocked the bill that provides aid to Tel Aviv. The bill, sponsored by the Republican majority in the lower house, was criticized by senators. They say conservatives want to delay support for Ukraine, while they accuse each other of wanting to manipulate aid to the North American nation's partners. Republicans also have questioned the amounts of aid to Kiev and are now rushing resources to Tel Aviv. but Senate Democrats reiterate that aid to Kiev cannot be delayed. Parliamentary disputes have escalated, with one lawmaker already censured. In the meantime, the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, pointed out to the Israeli President Isaac Herzog the importance of reaching a peace that guarantees freedom and prosperity for the Palestinian and Israeli peoples. Through a phone meeting, the U.S. Vice President stressed the importance of establishing the conditions that guarantee peace, freedom, and prosperity equally. Harris also pledged to continue working with partners throughout the region and also demanded the need to increase stability and security in the West Bank and hold extremist Israeli settlers accountable for violent acts beyond the current conflict. And on Wednesday, the U.S. House of Representatives approved a resolution of censure against Democrat Rashida Tlaib, the only congresswoman of Palestinian origin, for criticizing the Israeli genocide against Gaza. The resolution, promoted by Republicans, the censure representative, received 22 votes from her fellow members of the censure representatives party. They accuse her of promoting false narratives. The conservatives' proposal obtained 234 votes in favor against 188 negative votes and leave Rashida Tlaib one step away from being expelled from the chamber. For many legislators, this measure represents the last sign of persecution so far in the United States by anyone who speaks out in defense of Palestine. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. On Tuesday, in the Republican state of Ohio, in the Midwest of the United States, they defended abortion and approved an amendment that enshrines it as a constitutional right. The result is considered a significant victory for the abortion movement. It should be noted that in Ohio, former President Donald Trump, a sworn enemy of progressive laws, obtained 8 points in the 2020 election. On Tuesday, 4 states went to the polls: Ohio, Kentucky, Virginia, Mississippi. They find different issues through the ballot, all had in common a consultation on the abortion issue. With these results, Ohio activists are also aiming for a change in the state court.
To take my rights away from my children and my grandchildren is a no-go. You cannot do that. We are women. We are strong and powerful. Hear us roar. Every time we go out and knock doors, it's all about democracy, saving our rights, and putting an end to this chaos and hate that surrounds us here in Ohio.
We're ecstatic, but I will tell you that I'll wake up tomorrow and just pinch myself to make sure it really happened, because this has been so much trauma for all of us, going through the whole scenario of the state legislature trying to take away our rights to bodily autonomy. And at the center of it, all my conversations with voters and with petition signers has been about freedom, because that's what this is. It's about our freedom. And nobody should have to fight for it like we've had to fight for it. And we will not back down. And we took that energy and went with it for the last 8.5 months.
On Tuesday, a caravan of migrants has completed 6 days of stay in Huixtla, a town in the state of Chiapas in southern Mexico. Citizens from several countries such as Guatemala, Honduras, Venezuela, and El Salvador, among other nationalities, denounced the lack of attention from the migratory authorities and state that they are desperate due to the delay in the migratory procedures and the lack of response from the agency on which the regularization of their transit to the northern border depends. Many state that due to the lack of guarantees and responses, they have given up continuing their journey. In Panama, 2 persons were killed during anti-government protests, exacerbating social tensions that have risen since anger over a lucrative mining contract sparked demonstrations. The deaths come as street protests by thousands of Panamanians during the past weeks over a new mining contract signed with the Canadian mining firm First Quantum Minerals, spilled into wider discontent with the government. The attacker, a 77-year-old man, shot the victims who were at one of the teachers' protests on the Pan American Highway. One of the victims died at the scene, and the other died while being transported for medical treatment. Police arrested the assailant, who is currently in custody and could face charges of manslaughter. The new contract provides First Quantum a 20-year mining right with an option to extend for another 20 years in return for $375 million in annual revenue to Panama. Salvadoran organizations that defend the human right to water express concern that the water authority's regulations put community boards at a disadvantage. The National Alliance Against Privatization points out that the guidelines of the Salvadoran Water Authority for the implementation of General Law of Water Resources favors the agro-industry sector. The implementation of what is known as the social purpose coefficient and the transparency guidelines raise many doubts in the water defense platforms and could represent more expenses for citizens.
We are concerned about this new regulation created by the Water Authority, regulations and guidelines mandated by the General Law of Water Resources that have to be drafted but that today are promoting water injustice. So what we are seeing is that these guidelines create conditions to worsen the water crisis and don't guarantee the population's right to water. So today we are seeing the effects of the community water boards, but also to other sectors, and the concern is that there are new regulations that have yet to be drafted, and according to the calendar of regulations, the Water Authority plans to draft 4 new regulations this month, and in December 2 more. So the call is that the guidelines should respond to the principles of the law on the subject of the human right to water, public management, and not to other type of interests.
The Third Constitutional Chamber of the Supreme Court ordered the Peruvian Congress to suspend the investigation against the National Judicial Council, but the Parliament has warned that it will not abide by the decision. As soon as the ruling was known, the National Council announced that it accepted the decision to suspend the investigation against its magistrate. Almost at the same time, the Speaker's office of the Parliament decided to disobey the order and called for this Wednesday the continuation of the plenary that has planned the dismissal of all members of the National Council of Justice. For legal experts, the decision of the legislature opens the door to a dangerous political institutional crisis.
We are in a situation of serious danger to the constitutionality of the political system. We are on the verge of becoming a de facto government. It is no exaggeration because the Congress has lost sight of the fact that before this judicial resolution, the Congress is not a power. The Congress is part of a process. That is the file 3431-22023, in which the parties are the plaintiff, members of the National Board of Justice, and the Congress is the defendant.
Peru's Public Prosecutor's Office launched a corruption investigation against Nicanor Boluarte, brother of the country's president. The Special Task Force Against Corruption of the Public Prosecutor's Office began the investigation based on a journalistic complaint for false budget proposals of 20 million soles, equivalent to about 4.9 million euros, in which the mayor of the Nanchoc district, Nixon Hoyos, is also involved. The prosecutor's office has included in the investigation several members who were part of the electoral campaign of President Dina Boluarte. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at TeleSUR English. There you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the South. Thousands of far-right demonstrators gathered on Tuesday outside the headquarters of Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez to protest against his proposed law to grant amnesty to Catalan separatists. The demonstration was called by several far-right groups and supported by the far-right Vox Party, represented by the leader of its parliamentary group, Pepa Millán. Some protesters were reportedly dispersed by police charges and tear gas, while 6 people were arrested for disturbing the peace. On the other hand, Madrid's emergency services said 39 people were slightly injured, including 29 police officers. The socialists are seeking the Catalan separatist party's backing to form a new government and keep the center-left coalition in power. The separatists, on the other hand, have demanded a sweeping amnesty that would include their leaders who fled Spain following their failed 2017 secession attempt. France hosted a global summit on the poles and glaciers from Wednesday to Friday, November 10th, a new international meeting under the One Planet banner to discuss the pressing issues at the forefront of the impending climate catastrophe. Around 40 countries will be represented, including Germany, Italy, Belgium, China, India, Monaco, Switzerland, Kyrgyzstan, and Nepal. Some will be represented by their head of state or government. The expected outcomes of these 3 days include updates to Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's 2019 report on the ocean and cryosphere, the world's permanent snow, glaciers, ice caps, pack ice, lakes, and frozen ground. The summit is also aiming to produce a Paris appeal for poles and glaciers on Friday, when Macron will take part in the closing ceremony. The Polar Summit could also be an opportunity to forge coalitions of countries that could subsequently influence international decisions, such as the creation of marine protected areas in Antarctic waters. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu received General Zhang Youxia, Deputy Chairman of China's Central Military Commission, in Moscow on Wednesday. This is the second meeting between Russian and Chinese defense officials in just 10 days. Shoigu was present at the Security Forum held in Beijing on October 30th, where they held bilateral meetings. The Russian minister assured in brief statements that they will discuss measures to deepen cooperation, clarifying that unlike the aggressive Western countries, Russia and China do not create military blocs. Far from that, they maintain strategic interaction based on trust and respect. On Wednesday, North Korean state media denounced visits to Seoul by the United States top diplomat and defense chief as provocative acts that would raise tensions in the region. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived late Wednesday in South Korea and will meet his South Korean counterpart Park Jin the following day to discuss issues including nuclear-armed North Korea, Seoul's foreign ministry said. His 2-day trip will be followed by a visit by U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin to Seoul next week for ministerial-level meetings. The visit comes as Seoul and Washington ramp up defense cooperation in the face of a record-breaking series of weapons tests by Pyongyang this year. It also comes as North Korea strengthens its ties with Russia. The 2023 World Internet Conference Wuhan Summit kicked off on Wednesday in the ancient water city of Wuhan, East China's Zhejiang province, showcasing the latest advances in Internet technology with various sub-forums to promote global development initiatives. This year's summit features 20 sub-forums focusing on global development initiatives, artificial intelligence, computational networks, and online protection for minors. Representatives from various industries around the world will discuss key issues and share visionary perspective on Internet development and digital technology innovation trends. Throughout this year's summit, several concurrent events will take place, such as the unveiling of pioneering global Internet technology achievements, the release of the World Internet Conference Blue Book, and the highly anticipated grand finale of the Straight to Wuhan Global Internet competition. And we have come to the end of this news brief. Before saying goodbye, we want to thank our Caribbean audience, especially the audience of Trinidad and Tobago. We are pleased to share our newscast and contribute to provide an alternative news source of the latest world events. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social medias on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.